Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are. Welcome to the Allyant webinar covering the European Accessibility Act, commonly known as the EAA, in relation to compliance for digital documents, simplifying accessibility for PDFs and beyond. We appreciate you joining us. Looking forward to some content that will provide some guidance, overview, and understanding of how the European Accessibility Act relates to your requirements relative to digital documents. My name is Dan Sullivan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Allyant. Allyant is an organization that assists companies, governments, organizations across the globe in understanding, recognizing what their accessibility requirements are, and providing services, solutions, and other tools to enable organizations to meet and exceed those requirements. Today, our topics are going to be in relation to the European Accessibility Act and compliance with digital documents. I will let you know that this webinar is being recorded, so if for any reason during the course of this presentation you get called away to something more pressing or urgent, this will be recorded and it will be reviewed. If there's something that you miss, or if you didn't take notes through the course of this, we will have a fully accessible version of this webinar available via replay. I will also say that if there are questions that come up during the course of the presentation, please feel free to enter them into the question and answer section in the Zoom. You'll see a tab that allows that. There is also chat. We will be monitoring and responding to that. The idea for this will be that I will aggregate all those questions as they come in, and at the end of the presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. We'll address those questions. So please feel free to ask questions as they may come up, and we'll get to them towards the end. So the goal for today's webinar, quite frankly, is just to provide a comprehensive overview in relation to accessibility recommendations for PDFs, statements, and other digital documents. And once we understand what those standards are and what the requirements are as they relate to the European Accessibility Act, what we want to do is be able to provide a framework for success, and how there's a methodology that we recommend and suggest and work with many of our customers in addressing particularly their document accessibility requirements, which we refer to as true up, catch up, keep up, which is really a more comprehensive approach to understand exactly what the issues are related to your website, your domain, what digital documents you have available, and then providing a prescriptive process to go through the journey of making certain that those documents not only meet those requirements, but also any new documents that you create on an ongoing basis are developed and meet the compliance requirements. So with that, let's dig in. So European Accessibility Act, and for those organizations that service customers that are member countries of the European Union, the EAA is a directive which it was really designed to make certain that all communication channels and means by which, particularly within digital environments, that organizations, governments, companies essentially interact with and provide content to individuals with disabilities that enable them full access to that information. It really sets a common set of requirements so that not everyone is sort of guessing and in the dark relative to what these requirements are and what you need to meet for compliance. The EAA was adopted in 2019, and it really allows a deadline for meeting the full implementation of the requirements around the EAA of June 28th of 2025 this year. So many companies have been working in getting their infrastructures and getting things to where they need to be fully conformant with the EAA by June 28th of this year. We work with a number of companies that are just new to this process and working now to make as much impact as they can between now and the deadline, as well as set up infrastructure so that when they create new content on an ongoing basis, that they're able to deploy content that fully meets the requirements relative to the EAA coming this June. So we're really going to put a focus on digital documents today. And when we refer to digital documents, we're really talking about those documents and those pieces of communication that may be available through websites or that you may be sending out electronically via email, things like PDFs, electronic Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, things of that nature. If they're accessible within your site, or these are things that you communicate with customers or constituents, they need to make certain that they are fully conformant with EAA and the global standards relative to accessibility. Oftentimes, what we find with many of our customers is they put a lot of focus on the web infrastructure, software infrastructure, websites, things of that nature, getting it to where to meet the standards, to meet EAA or other requirements that you're working on. Oftentimes, what gets overlooked or does not get considered is those digital documents that are utilized by individuals or folks can access, download, or leverage. And there are some significant similarities to the way in which PDFs interact relative to a website, and there are some things that are relatively different. But in reality, there are standards and some of the global standards that apply to accessibility, and certainly some of the websites. And I think there are three that are outlined in the EAA. And frankly speaking, they all come back to and really foundationally revolve around the WCAG standards. Particularly within the EAA, they make reference to 2.1 AA. I will say, since the EAA was first published, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines have moved to 2.2 AA, and those standards generally are iterative. But I would tell you that the vast majority of work that most organizations do and the work that we do relative to digital documents is to 2.2. The good news is it's an iterative standard. It meets or exceeds the standards. The other two that are commonly referred to are PDF UA, which is an ISO standard, and then the EN 301 549. I would tell you that for the purposes of clarity, I think if you really strive towards the WCAG standard, all of the other standards that are denoted really foundationally build off of WCAG 2.1. And as I say, the work that we do for our customers, and we literally remediate and provide accessibility into millions of pages of PDF. We currently remediate those PDFs to a 2.2 AA standard, which exceeds the requirements under the EAA. So those are the standards. The one thing I would just say from what are the similarities and what are the differences relative to PDFs or digital documents in relation to a website? Frankly speaking, a website and a PDF are more similar than they are dissimilar with respect to accessibility and how an individual that may be using assistive technology like a screen reader may use it. In essence, you can think of a PDF as a more static, smaller version of a website, where being able to provide tagging, being able to provide structure, being able to provide navigation within that document, which enables the screen reader to fully communicate the content of that information to the user, as well as navigate through that site fairly easily. The one significant difference that exists between a website or a digital infrastructure and a PDF is where websites tend to be more dynamic. Web organizations are constantly releasing new content, constantly doing new sprints and releasing new information, which has to meet those standards as that content gets deployed. The real significant difference with a PDF, generally speaking, is that they are static. And when you go through the process of remediating or developing or building a PDF to meet the standard, you don't have new releases. Generally speaking, a completely new PDF would be generated and deployed, so that the concept of being able to update and monitor and stay in touch with those PDFs is not the same as it is within a digital environment, which frankly speaking makes it a little bit easier to address digital documents than it does digital infrastructures, because once you get it to where it needs to be, you don't have to worry about the upkeep and the maintenance of that digital document. So as we move forward, let's just talk about within the confines of the EAA, who must comply. And if you are on this webinar, and if you are sort of consuming this content, we assume that you have read or understand that you have requirements that exist within the EAA. But generally, the types of organizations that need to comply are banks and financial institutions. Those are entities and organizations that provide mobile apps, websites, as well as electronic documents that you may send out. Those digital documents need to be fully accessible and conformant with the EAA. So things like bank statements, letters, things of that nature. Government agencies, all of the public documents and forms that exist within a PDF or within a digital document need to be fully conformant with the EAA and by extension WCAG standards. Online retailers and e-commerce, oftentimes communications will be sent and documents will be created out of those infrastructures, things like invoices, receipts, etc., return documentation, things of that nature. Transport services, so organizations that post things like schedules, issue electronic versions of tickets. booking documents, etc. And then in the education marketplace, making certain that students that have accessibility requirements have media content and information that's provided to them that's fully accessible. And oftentimes, many of that can be in the form of digital documents. So as we sort of address the concept of addressing digital documents within accessibility, we have a myriad of customers that range really a wide range of sort of maturation processes through the process of addressing their accessibility requirements. And as we often say, it's sort of a journey. The idea is to get an assessment of where you're at, develop a plan, and begin to execute on that plan. And for the purposes around digital documents, we often refer to or speak to our customers within the context of the phrase true up, catch up, keep up. And the idea is let's work collaboratively. Let's sit down together. Let's address whatever digital environments that you are so that we can understand exactly how many documents you have, how many of them have requirements, how many of them could be archived, et cetera, where you really understand the nature of the volume of digital documents that you have and that you need to make accessible. We refer to this as true up. Here at Allyant, we have tools and resources that we work with our customers that will take any digital environment that you have. We have a technology resource that will actually crawl your website, will identify every PDF that exists within that domain. We'll run it through a full assessment of where that digital document stands relative to conformance with the WCAG guidelines, and provide you a comprehensive report of the inventory of all the PDFs that you have within your digital environment, where they stand relative to accessibility. And what we will often do in circumstances like that is we will cross-reference with IT departments within the organization to determine of those digital documents and of those PDFs, which are being accessed on a more frequent basis or a more regular basis than others. And what that does is it enables us to prioritize those documents, really make certain that the effort that we put forth in making these documents fully accessible are those documents that are most commonly being used by individuals that access the content on your site. So that's sort of the concept of true up, right? Let's just get an understanding of what is the size, the scope, and the scale of the process that we have at this point. And then at that point, we can understand where we want to begin to prioritize. At that point, once we've sort of taken the inventory and we know where it's at, we know how many documents we have, we know where we stand relative to accessibility, the next step in that process that we work with our customers is what we refer to as catch up. And catch up is, all right, what do we need to do to address those documents that we now have that may be in our backlog, or those documents that we've identified that have prioritization and need to be accessible for our users, and how do we get them to the point where they are conformant with the guidelines? And here at Allyant, one of the ways that we do that, and we've been assisting organizations and companies and governments in addressing making existing PDFs that are inaccessible, making them accessible through a services process with our PDF remediation team. And within a 5-day period, you can send us those documents. We'll put them through a comprehensive assessment and process of adding all of the necessary requirements, making certain that that document fully meets the WCAG 2.2 AA guidelines. And we revert those documents back to you, not only in a fully conformant manner that meets the requirements with a 100% guarantee, but we also provide you with an attestation of the document itself, of the work that we've done, and the status of where that stands relative to meeting accessibility. So not only do you get the document back in a fully remediated and fully accessible manner, but you also have documents that are able for you at any point that you could provide to anyone relative to outlining where that document stands in relation to meeting the guidelines. So once we work with our organizations and we're able to prioritize those documents that you have now, making certain that anything that's available within your digital environment is fully accessible. Now that we've gotten, as I like to refer to as, to sort of level ground, the concept is, how do we sit down with our customers and strategically develop a plan to make certain that you can keep up? Now that you've got the documents that are now available on your site, fully accessible and conformant with the guidelines, how do we make certain that we put processes in place which enable you to feel confident that every time someone in your organization deploys or puts a new digital document up within your environment, that it was created and it meets those requirements? Again, using our assessment technology and some of our digital tools, you'll be able to run through any assessment on those documents to determine where they stand relative to accessibility. And we have a couple of different ways in which organizations can work with us to ensure that these new documents are fully accessible. We have a series of software tools that users can use so that when you are developing new and creating new PDFs, that you're able to make certain that all of those structures, tags, and processes that are required to ensure that that document meets fully accessible and conforming guidelines is done. Additionally, we have other customers that, understanding and recognizing that they have limited resources, will choose or opt to send those documents to Allyant. We will make certain that they meet those requirements and we send them back. So as I say, that within the context of it all, it's true up, catch up, keep up, which is let's assess where you're at. Let's determine the prioritization. Let's develop a plan. Let's work through the catch up process. And I think one of the nice things about digital documents, particularly with EAA becoming fully implemented and fully required by the mid-year of this year, we, from a catch-up perspective, we can get those digital documents back to you in a week's time. This is oftentimes looked at as the last mile in an accessibility process, and many organizations don't realize or don't take into consideration while they're working through their website infrastructures that PDFs are required to be accessible. The good news about that is this is one of those areas where it's pretty easy to have a third party like Allyant that's been doing this for a significant period of time be able to address those requirements and go through that process of getting those documents to where they're at. And as I say, if there are questions, and I'm happy to say that there are some questions that are coming in on both the chat and on the Q&A, please put them in and I will be more than happy to answer them at the end. So as we work with organizations and we work with customers across a wide gamut of sort of their posture in the journey of making certain that their environments are accessible, the one thing that we really try and articulate and communicate is the first thing we need to do is we really need to understand that making progress, having a plan, and working towards the end destination is the most important component of addressing this. We often preach the concept of progress over perfection. We know that requirements that have a whole host of different specific criteria around them, like the WCAG standards relative to digital or documents and things of that nature, can oftentimes be overwhelming. We know that deadlines, all they do is get closer. And we know that with the mid-year of EAA, however, we believe that sitting down, developing and putting together really a comprehensive approach and strategy on how you want to deal with this, and then beginning to chip away at that, being able to demonstrate that you're making meaningful progress in the right direction to get your digital documents and, frankly speaking, your digital environments to where they need to be, shows a demonstrable plan to get to where you need to be. I will tell you that you will never ever get an infrastructure to where it's fully and completely 100% to where it needs to be. But being able to demonstrate and make certain that you're making significant progress, that you're identifying those areas where users have access to accessible content is absolutely the best strategy. So we always ask our customers, and many customers come to us, you know, this has been a topic that's been in the marketplace for 2 or 3 years. The deadline is now rapidly approaching. They've now turned their priority to it, and oftentimes people are a little bit nervous or a little bit overwhelmed. They feel under the gun. And the first thing that we say is, let's take a step back. Let's just take a deep breath. Let's assess where we're at. Let's make some progress. Let's identify where we can make the most significant progress towards conformance with the requirements as quickly and as efficiently and as effectively as we can. And oftentimes what we find is being able to develop a strategy, particularly around your PDFs and digital documents, is the lowest hanging fruit that exists within the process. You have resources like Allyant and others that you can provide those documents to, and we can provide them back to you in a fairly quick timeline, which really enable you to demonstrate progress towards meeting conformance of EAA requirements. We have a team of document accessibility specialists here, many of which have been working with customers addressing their PDF and digital document needs relative to accessibility for 10 plus years. We will be more than happy to sit down with you, work with you, provide you an assessment. We will be more than happy to deploy our PDF detection tool called Clarity, where we can essentially execute an assessment of your digital environments and come back to you with a comprehensive list of all of the PDFs that are available that individuals can identify on your website and give you a snapshot as to where those stand relative to accessibility. And with that, it gives us the opportunity to dig in, develop the plan, and begin to make progress towards the end destination and goal of what we're looking for. So When it comes to addressing, one of the nice things about addressing and talking about digital documents relative to the conformance with some of these things is it's a more finite issue without the dynamic aspects of a web environment. This is, frankly speaking, a little bit easier and a little bit more definable segment of your infrastructure to address. So frankly speaking, it's not the kind of topic that you need to spend an hour or two talking about. When we talk about all the processes that you put in place, particularly around websites or software environments, obviously there's a lot more, it's a lot more comprehensive and a lot more that you have to address within that. So within that, that sort of brings us to the end of the content, but I do definitely, and we do have a number of questions in the chat, and I want to make certain we have the opportunity to address those, and I will go through them one by one. If there are other questions that come up, I'll be more than happy to answer those. So the first question that we have in our Q&A is, do you conduct manual testing of the documents? So not only do we conduct manual testing of the documents, but we also do manual remediation. So we have a team of well over 100 full-time remediators that work on remediating existing documents, and a QA team. So we do not use and rely exclusively on automation to address this. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we typically find is that everybody is looking for ways in which they can leverage machine learning, AI, and tools and resources that are out there. And there are great advancements that are taking place in the marketplace relative to the utilization of automated tools to address this. But frankly speaking, where a lot of that automation is most effective and most meets those criteria is really relative to more structured documents, like things like standardized statements, bills, invoices, things of that nature. But to answer the question quite simply is, not only do we conduct manual testing, but we also go through a manual remediation and a manual QA process to make certain that when we attest to the fact that that document is 100% conformant with the guidelines, it goes through a fairly rigorous process. Second question is, does Allyant offer a service of converting a document to an ASL LSQ video like they do for PDF to voice, braille, and remediating? So we do not offer a service where it converts it or provides it into an ASL or LSQ video. In essence, what we do is we revert back to our customers a fully remediated document that is interactive and works within the WCAG guidelines and can be utilized by a screen reader. But we do not offer a service where we convert the documents into a video. Another individual asked, I wonder what kind of software you use, and I certainly appreciate that question. So within Allyant, one of the groups that organizations that we have in our business units that's been addressing digital document accessibility and PDF accessibility is Common Look. We have an entire suite of software tools which are referred to the Common Look software suite, which includes tools and resources for practitioners to address PDFs, Word documents, and a host of other infrastructure. So yes, that's not only do we use our own software, but we actually provide our software as a resource and as a tool to individuals as part of that sort of keep up aspect of what we were talking about a few slides back. Is many of our customers and a significant majority of our customers actually leverage and utilize our Common Look software to ensure and make certain that the new PDFs that they're developing, or frankly speaking, going back and making alterations or adjustments to existing PDFs, if they don't want to utilize our service, they can use that software. In addition to that, we have a free assessment version of our Common Look software called Common Look Validator. And on the Allyant site, you can download that. And essentially that free version of that software, which would sit on your desktop, would give you the capabilities to put any PDF into it and get an assessment as to where it stands relative to WCAG guidelines, so that you can quickly ascertain on your own the documents that you do have, or if you're creating a new document, where it stands to meeting the guidelines. So this particular question I have is, does this meeting only focus on digital documents, or is there an agenda for digital properties like web, app, etc.? Yes, our next webinar, which is coming up next month, which will be hosted by our Vice President of Digital Accessibility, Mr. Aaron Page, and our Vice President of Digital Sales, Ryan Whelan, will actually be hosting a full webinar that will speak specifically about digital properties, websites. So keep an eye on that. It will be posted on our website. We have a full and complete agenda for that. This particular section or this particular content today has an exclusive focus on digital documents, but within the Alliant suite, we have a team that work with organizations in addressing all of the digital environments. Another question is, are you saying you can remediate 1,000 backlogged non-compliant documents in 5 days? Yes, we do that. We have a team of, as I explained before, well over 100 full-time remediators that work, and frankly speaking, our company has been doing this for almost 20 years. Common Look has really established a gold level standard within the PDF accessibility marketplace for not only providing software and tools and resources to make PDFs accessible, but a team of professionals that work on doing nothing but making certain that your digital documents are fully conformant with the guidelines. So yes, I am saying that we can remediate 1,000 backlog documents, and our typical SLA for those documents is turning them around in a 5-day period. So the way that that would ordinarily work is you reach out to us, you may have those may be available on your website. We can get the documents that way, or frankly speaking, you can send them to us to a couple of different ways. We have a file transfer process. We have a portal that you can utilize. And frankly speaking, some of our customers send us their documents via email. The process and the way that that works is that we will assess those documents to determine how complex they are. We'll turn a quote around to you generally within 24 hours, and then we'll begin the work on making those PDFs accessible. And our SLA, service level agreement, would say that we can get those back to you in 5 days. So to answer your question, yes. And we have thousands of companies globally that have relied upon and utilized Common Look to do that work for them on a regular basis. So what is the vision for making budget books and financial statements accessible? I've tried. It's very hard. I agree with you. The person who asked this question, there are aspects and components of putting together digital documents, and more sophisticated, particularly those that include things like tables and graphs, that are very complicated and they are very difficult. What oftentimes many of our customers that we work with will use our software and will create those digital documents that aren't as complex using our software and doing it on their own. And they will take those more complex and significant documents and they'll provide them to us and our remediation team, who literally have decades of experience in being able to do that and turning them back to you. So I would say when you run into those really complex ones, that's where you can rely on the expertise of our team that have been doing that, and we'll be able to get those documents back to you in a fully accessible manner. Does Allyant run accessibility tests on audio and video files present in the digital environment? So there are really 3 areas where Allyant specializes and focuses on, and in 3 different aspects of addressing accessibility. So the first is digital environment, so websites, digital content, software, et cetera. Second area is in digital documents and PDFs. And the third is in print communications, where we work with all of the largest organizations in North America and being able to take any communications that they need to provide in a print format and being able to give that to their customers in the format that they like, whether that's Braille, reflowed large print, audio files, etc. One area where we do not focus or specialize, but we have partners that work that are best of breed players in the marketplace that do this work, is on audio and video files. So in most of the engagements that we work with, in order to be a comprehensive one-stop provider, we work with noted partners in that marketplace that provide those services that have been sort of gold standard, best of breed providers in the marketplace. So we can provide that as an extension of the service, but we don't actually do the audio and video file work. And then is there a way that we can access the transcript? I'm profoundly deaf and would like to review the transcript. Not only will the transcript be available, but we will be providing a fully transcribed and captioned version of this webinar, which will be provided back to all participants and those who signed up, so that you will be able to have a full transcript and captioned version of it. How can we address discoverability, meta tags, and PDFs as the EAA requires? So spoke about that before. One of the areas that you can, so this is one of those areas where I think it would probably make some sense to have schedule some time and work with one of our accessibility consultants that can walk through and show you. But both using our software solutions, but also just using the Common Look validator tool that you can download for free will enable you to identify that and give you the discoverability of metadata. We've got a team of an entire training team that works with our customers and making certain that they can utilize those tools and being able to address and provide you support to being able to identify all of the discoverability of those tags. So when auditing PDFs, what approach do you take when the document will be both printed and digital? Right. So our approach is fully within line to making certain that it meets and fully conforms with the WCAG 2.2 AA guidelines. Generally speaking, if you need to print documents or if you need to provide printed documents in alternative formats, those are things that we at Allyant have the capabilities to do, and we work with hundreds of customers in being able to do that. The question ultimately is that are you looking to present print ready digital documents that can be printed in either reflow large print or in Braille? We do have software tools that will actually enable you to convert PDFs into those formats for individuals that need to print them, and that's certainly something that we could discuss with you and review. Do all online education companies and/or entrepreneurs need to be compliant, or is EAA for companies of a certain size only? No, there aren't any carve-outs with respect to that. So I think, I would say that the interesting thing about the enforcement on the EAA, it's a little bit unique and it's a little bit different than the way in which EAA exists as a guideline, and that the enforceability and some of the requirements really come on a country by country basis. So whichever country that you are servicing or your customer may be servicing or which you may sit in, you'll want to take a look at it in the enforceability and if there are any carve-outs. But generally speaking, particularly in education, we find that really the best posture that you want to take is to make certain that you meet those requirements. Another question we had: PDF remediation is very expensive. Do you have a service for bulk remediation throughout the year? We absolutely do. I would say that the cost or the expense relative to PDF remediation needs to be looked at in a more holistic level. If you look at what compensation costs, what access to software tools is, and doing it on your own, if you factor out all the hard and soft costs to making PDFs accessible, it can be expensive. Oftentimes, many of our customers actually find that the most economical and the least expensive route is to provide the documents to Allyant and allow our team to go through and do it. However, I will say, in response to that question, we do have software platforms and tools that specifically address high volume PDFs. So think about templated documents like statements or letters or things of that nature, which you produce in very high volumes. We have software tools and solutions that will integrate into your document creation process and enable you to make certain that all of those documents that you create are fully conformant and meet the requirements. So yeah, that is absolutely a solution. It really depends on the use case and the types of documents that you have. Another question we have is, I joined late. Sorry if you've already covered this. If someone works with you, are there pay per document plans, or is it more like a monthly plan? So generally speaking, the way that it works presently is it's a by document, and it's based on the size and the complexity of the document that you have. I would say that the overwhelming majority of documents that we do address and we work on are more basic and come on the lower end of our scale. But things like fillable forms, which you can require hours per page to remediate, tend to be more expensive. But you also ask if there are different pay rates for things like Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Yes, we do them all. We actually quote them out. We will provide you a quote at no charge. All you have to do is provide the document to us, and we will provide back to you a quote on what that is, and then you can let us know if you need to move forward. But subscriptions really address and pertain to some of the software solutions that we have to do the high volume. And then it said, would a customer send you their standard and check that your remediation? Yes. So our default standard is to remediate to WCAG 2.2 AA. However, if there's a specific standard that you want your digital documents to adhere to, all you have to do is let us know what that is, and then we can go from there. And then another question we had is, are remediations only done in English documents? Or does your company work in other languages? We do. essentially most right to left languages we're able to do, and frankly speaking, almost every language we can do. But just check with us, and if there is a language that presents a challenge to us, we'll certainly let you know. But I would say the overwhelming majority of languages that you can present to us, we have the ability to do. Is the Common Look Validator very different from PAC? I would say that the Common Look Validator tool and PAC are more similar than dissimilar. I would say that, Common Look and the Common Look Validator tool has been a standard that's been in the marketplace and utilized for probably upwards of nearly 20 years. So it's, it's sort of the standard of the validator. But frankly speaking, there is not a significant differentiation between the two tools. Here's a great question. Do you think the Common Look PDF Validator could be available for Mac iOS users anytime soon? Looking forward to it. I am incredibly happy to tell you, for those individuals that have been challenged with some of the limitations on Validator, most notably that it doesn't work in Mac iOS environments, that we will be launching a new version, a web-based version of the Common Look tools that should be coming in the second quarter. We're actively in alpha and beta testing on them now, which will be fully and completely available to users on any operating system or platform. So what we will be saying is welcome to those individuals that work on Mac that have been wanting to use Common Look Validator or Common Look PDF tools, as well as those individuals that do not necessarily have or rely upon Adobe Acrobat Pro. We now have tools that will not be dependent on those resources. Keep an eye. We'll be communicating regularly. That is absolutely coming. All right, just want to check the time because I know we have a lot of questions and many of these we can get back to. But does one need to remediate old PDFs that are on the site? How far back should we go? So that's a great question, and different standards have different requirements. I would tell you that the rule of thumb that we've been using, particularly with EAA and all of the different global requirements that come out, have differentiated requirements around that. One of the things where the EAA seems to be far more explicit than implied is on new documents that are created as of June 28th moving forward. However, the recommendation that we've been making to organizations in the EAA is once we do an assessment through that true-up process of the documents that we have and we take an inventory, one of the things that we're able to do is cross-reference and take a look at how frequently are the documents that are being utilized. What we've offered is sort of a good best practice is you may have documents that were created prior to the full implementation deadline of June 28th of 2025. But if we can find the top 10 or 15% of those documents that are frequently accessed, that are most commonly utilized, we think that it's good practice to make those accessible, just to sort of take the gray out of the interpretation and make it more black and white. Oftentimes we would recognize or ask customers to say, if you've got PDF documents that are available on your website that have been there for 8 or 10 years and have just historically sat there, but we find that people aren't accessing them or using them, does it make sense to maybe look at a process of archiving those documents and really coming up with strategies? What is the cost per page or error for remediation? So the way in which we do our remediation services is it is priced on a per page basis, and the cost generally varies based on the complexity and the structure of the document. So a very simple, basic document will be significantly less expensive than, say, a form-based document that has 20 or 30 fillable form fields within it. So the way that it works is the cost is on a per page basis. You submit the document to us for a quote. We'll turn it back to you in short order with a quote on what that document will be. But I would tell you that the overwhelming majority of pages that we quote tend to fall into the lower cost, less expensive component of the scale, if you will. Do you work in U.S. markets as well and aid conformance with ADA Title II? Absolutely. Allyant is a North American-based company. We have well over 2,000 customers that work with us on a regular basis and addressing Title II, Section 508, ADA, all of the requirements in North America. So yes, we absolutely work. What we've definitely seen is a significant increase in the number of customers that we're working with in Europe to address that. So I know we're coming up on time, and I wanted to sort of go, so I'm going to try and get through the last couple of questions. But if there are questions that we have here that don't get fully answered, I'll make certain that I'm able to respond to them. 2 questions. If you perform manual remediation, that means all the work should be done after printing the PDF again. No. The issue is what we turn back to you is a digital document that will be fully conformant with WCAG for the utilization with a screen reader, right? If you're printing that document, you know, being able to get that into an alternative format that works is something that that's a complete. We have tools and resources that actually use software that will enable you to convert that into formats that individuals can print it out that are fully accessible. And I'm more than happy to discuss this topic with you in more detail. So will Allyant outside of accessible PDFs when plain language standards come out? Will that be a service offered as part of the remediation? Yes. Is there a different cost for fillable and non-fillable PDFs? Absolutely. There are some relatively complex fillable forms, which I'm certain if you're familiar with them, that can take hours upon hours to do work. There are some fairly basic and simple documents that we can do pretty quickly. So from that perspective, there is definitely a cost difference between fillable and non-fillable PDFs. As I say, we provide a full and comprehensive quote on what our cost per page is, and we also work with customers that have high volumes of PDF to address more contract rates or put together more ongoing rates for predictability. Do you provide a copy of compliance report with remediated documents? Yes. Earlier in the presentation, we did talk about that. Within the way in which Common Look works at, not only do we turn back a 100% fully accessible PDF to you, but each document that we remediate and turn back to you is accompanied by a document attesting the work and the compliance work that we've done. All right. And then what is the license cost? The license cost it's really predicated on volume for the Common Look PDF plugin. We'd be more than happy to discuss that with you and talk to you about that. I would tell you from a tool perspective, it really, looking at the cost and the value on that, it really comes down to a matter of the time that it takes for you to work and become proficient with the tool, the volume of PDFs that you think that you need to remediate during the course of the year or create, as well as sort of how does that compare to the cost for us to do it. And we will, any of our accessibility consultants would be more than happy to sit down and talk about that. Are there major differences between the ADA and the EAA, which is the last question. And I was hoping to be done within 45 minutes, so this will do it. Yes, there are major differences between the ADA and the EAA. They're completely different levels of requirements and laws. Frankly speaking, the ADA goes back over nearly 30 years. The overwhelming majority of the ADA was written before websites and digital environments were sort of prominent. EAA, dating back to 2019, was in a world where the vast majority of communication interactions in the world that we have are within digital environments. So I would tell you that the way in which both of those requirements are uniquely different. But both of them, insofar as the provision of digital resources, whether it's websites, digital documents, and things of that nature, are far more similar than dissimilar insofar as sort of the force and effect of what they look for. I think one of the nice things about these two requirements is almost everything reverts back to the WCAG 2.1 or 2.2 guidelines. I think most of the clarifications around the ADA and EAA specifically references 2.1 AA. But I think one of the reasons why a global standard was put in place is so that organizations that worked globally didn't have to be addressing different versions of content to different standards in different countries. So I would just tell you, when it comes to meeting the requirements relative to the EAA or ADA or Section 508 or DOJ rulemaking relative to local and municipal governments in the United States, whatever that is, I think the rule of thumb is if you work your processes through meeting the most up-to-date version of the WCAG standards, you'll be in good shape almost every time. All right, so with that, I very much appreciate everybody's joining us today. I have a team of individuals here in the organization that have been working with customers and addressing these topics on a customer-by-customer basis. We have decades of experience in doing that. If for any reason you have a desire to sit down and speak with one of our consultants a little bit more, be able to identify, how can I true up, how can I catch up? If you would like us to run an assessment on your digital environment to give you an inventory of the PDFs you have presently and where they stand relative to accessibility, just reach out to us. We'll get somebody in contact with you. We'll be more than happy to have that conversation. You can just email us at info@allyant.com. We'll have one of our accessibility experts get in touch with you in short order, and we'll be able to walk you through. Going back to the slide that I had talked about before, which is progress over perfection, whether you've been working on this and trying to get ready to be where you need to be by June 28th of this year, and you've been working on it for a number of years, or if this is a directive of something that's relatively new to you and you're trying to get your organization as conformant as it can by that deadline, the first thing that I say to everybody is take a deep breath. Let's sit down. Let's identify the best way to go. Let's chart a plan. Let's make progress over perfection. Let's start to build incremental progress towards the goal. And I don't think that there's anyone from an enforcement perspective that would look poorly or look differently on an organization that clearly has a plan and is executing on that plan and making progress towards the end destination. So we're here to help. Allyant helps organizations across the globe in being able to do this. And no matter where you are in that journey, we have teams and organizations that will be there to help you. So if there are any questions, if there's anything you want to talk to, by all means, info@Allyant. If there's anybody that wants to follow up with me personally, my email address is dsullivan, SULLIVAN, @Allyant. I'll be more than happy to follow up on anything that we covered here or direct you to any resources that you may need, or make certain that we get the best people on our team aligned with you and your organization to help you get to where you need to be. With that, I'm very thankful for your time. If there's any portion of this that you would like to review, we will be posting a recorded version of this webinar that will be fully captioned and available. Look out for it. If you registered for this webinar, we will communicate with you via email on that, and the webinar will be available on our website for review. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.